Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Welcome to the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast, where I am your host, Doug C. Brown, and the C stands for charming. And today I have the privilege to welcome to the show Mr. Mitch Russo. Now, Mitch, as a business founder, he started, found, and grew a solid company, and he sold that company off for 8 figures. He also partnered with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes to build a very profitable $25 million company. He has authored 2 books, one called Power Tribes and the other, The Invisible Organization. Mitch is a pretty unique guy. He's got a very, I would say, colorful background, and you're going to really appreciate some of the stories he shares. He's very pragmatic, very logical, and he went on to build a lot of different divisions for a lot of different companies. And today, he has his own business and coaching and consulting and helping companies build out tribes, build out invisible organizations, helping them get to the next level. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mitch to the podcast. So pull up your chair, put your listening ears on, if you will, and you're going to hear some amazing stuff on how to get your business to the next level. Mitch, I want to welcome you to our show.
Doug, thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here. It's great to see you again, and I'm excited about being with you today.
I'm extremely excited as well. So for our listeners, if you don't know the backstory here, Mitch, actually, well, I'll just call it, you were my boss at one time, right? So
yep.
Mitch was the CEO and high creator of revenue within a company called Business Breakthroughs International, which was with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. And I was the president of training and sales for that particular company. And I worked hand in hand with Mitch. And I'm so excited for all of you to be able to listen to this today, because Mitch has gone on, he has this incredible journey through his life, which I hope we can talk a little bit about. And also, where he is now in his life, with different things that he's doing, whether it's, Power Tribes or the Invisible Organization or Profit Stacking Secrets. So, Mitch, I'd like to begin by, a lot of people, they all talk about, well, geez, look, this guy's successful, and must have been easy to get there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How long did it take you to be an overnight success? But, I would love for you to tell your backstory, how did this all get started for you?
Perfect. Well, I got to tell you, I am an overnight success if you can add 20 years to the beginning of my story. But to tell you the truth, this all started for me in high school. And the reason I say that is because I was a very shy kid. And the one thing I wanted more than anything was to have a girlfriend, but I was too shy to approach girls. So Doug, what I decided to do, because I'm a strategist, even as a kid, I said, well, how do you get girls? Well, I guess if I had a rock band, I would be able to invite girls, and that's how I'd meet them. So I literally spent years learning to play the guitar so I could have a rock band in high school, which I did. And it turned out to be an incredible strategy because we had girls coming over every Saturday for band practice. But here's the interesting part of this story to me. The interesting part is that I learned at the age of 16 all about business. I learned about promotion, about marketing, about price testing, about competition, about discipline, about quality. All these things became so important to being able to create a music experience of quality. We used to get stoned and play the guitar, and it was fun. And we turn on the recorder and play it back and go, oh my God, that sounds terrible. So the first rule was no getting high. you want to play in this band? We'll have band practice, but you can't get high. And I know this maybe will offend some people, but the bottom line is that I'm a kid of the 60s and everybody in high school smoked pot. So, I did too, but not to the extent that some of my friends did. However, what we did is we took each song one at a time and we practiced it over and over, and sometimes for weeks until we got it perfect. Now, I wouldn't want to use the word perfect because really in business, the price of perfection is bankruptcy, but we got it really, really close. And at that point, we went on to the next song. And by the time we had 14 songs ready to go, we were booking gigs. And that's the start. I mean, that's how I learned. That's where I began my education in business.
What I got out of that one, Mitch, is look, firstly, there's this passion, right? Or there's this desire, right? So, I mean, all of you listening here, pay attention to the attraction factor of incoming leads. What in this case was, how do we get girls, right? How do we get girls to pay attention?
Right.
And through that experience of having a desire and just wanting to go forward with that particular desire, it turned into a business lesson or life's lessons that you took from an early age and carried all the way through.
Exactly. And then what ended up happening is as I got older, I found myself immersed in electronics. Electronics was always my hobby. I used to, basically I entered every science fair I had the opportunity to enter, and I won a few of them. And, I was sent home several times because the teacher thought my father built my project when really wasn't my father. Because I was a pretty involved kid when it came to electronics. So I knew I'd pursue that growing up, and I did. I became, basically at first, I went to school for color television repair. And now imagine that. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I tried college. I didn't like it. So I dropped out. And my mom said, look, you got to do something. What do you want to do? And I said, well, Fred comes to the house and fixes the TV. I really like him. I like what he does. Maybe I should do what Fred does. And she goes, well, if that's what you want, I'll find you a color television repair school and we can get you enrolled. So she did. And I enrolled and I went on this journey of learning to fix color television sets. But then the sixth term, the final term of school, we had to take this mandatory class, which I thought was completely useless, called digital electronics. Now, digital electronics, I mean, everyone knows TVs don't have digital electronics. It's tubes, right? But this one professor was very smart. He saw the future and said, look, there's going to be a lot of digital electronics in TVs someday. So you got to learn it. Well, this guy then started to call me up after class every day, and he'd give me these individual assignments. He gave me this book. He said, study chapter 2 and 3 and do the exercise at the end. And I did. And then at the end, I turned it in and he'd give me another exercise. And he didn't do this for anybody else, but I was having fun. So I didn't complain. And then finally, at the end of the term, he said to me, do you realize what you just did? I said, I have no idea. What are you talking about? He said, you just completed years 1 and 2 of digital electronic circuit design theory. I said, what? He goes, yeah, you now have the same expertise as many college graduates when it comes to logic design. And I realized that all of a sudden I had this ability, and I started designing circuits. And I realized my passion was not in fixing color TVs. It was in circuit design. So that's where I headed next. And I ended up getting a job for a semiconductor company called Mostech. Mostech is out of business. They were originally purchased by United Technologies. And I became a field application engineer for Mostech. But here's what happened. I get into field application engineering. I became one of the best in the country at microprocessor design and debugging, Z80 microprocessor coding and problem solving. So I was flown all over the country into large corporations, into big labs with a bunch of adults, helping them fix their problems that I could fix in 5 minutes they spent months trying to solve. Well, that was fun, but I noticed something. I noticed that the sales guys were the ones making the big bucks, and they were morons, to be honest. I said, well, I could do that. So I went to the top sales guy in the company and I said, hey, I want to join the sales force. And he looks at me, he kind of has that, that kind of a evil smile on his face. And he says to me, Mitch, great salespeople are born and you're not one of them. And I had 3 words go through my mind. Do you want to guess what those 3 words were?
Can we repeat them to our listeners?
Yes, this is PG. Here's the 3 words. I'll show you. And at that point, I quit the job and I went to work for his competitor. And I became the 3rd top salesman in the state for semiconductor sales. I was selling 20 plus million a year in semiconductor sales. And that's where I built up my cash reserves to go to the next step.
Interesting. So, all of you millennials and Genners out there, Gen X, Gen whatever Gen you are, pay attention because there were things called vacuum tubes in televisions a while back, right?
You got it.
So, but what I hear, look, I hear a lot of, because I know you. And so your backstory, it's like connecting the dots to where you became this high successful person. And, I've known you all through the years for these 2 things, which is courage and grit. And, because even at Business Breakthroughs International, we had some challenging times that we had to work through as well.
Sure.
Right. So, courage and grit and a propensity to want to make sales. So did that lead you on for the semiconductor? Because I know you went on to build a company called Time Slips, and then you sold that off to Sage, and then you built the back end for Sage, or you had like 300 people working with you. Is that what kind of led you into, because I would, knowing you, I would say it's more like logic design is your forte, because that's what I witnessed throughout our lives together.
Well, that's a great observation and very insightful of you, Doug, because really that's what I got out of going to engineering school, the short period of time that I did. I learned how to think like an engineer. And then through my work with my teacher at television repair school, I learned logic design, and therefore my mind seemed to love it. In other words, when your mind loves something when it becomes a natural way of thinking. And that to me became a very natural way of thinking. So problem solving, finding solutions, finding a better way to do almost everything became my mantra. And without even knowing the words, that's just how I acted all the time. So once I decided that it was time for me to move on from being a salesman, it came, and this is going to sound a little weird because it came to me as a decision, a silent decision inside of myself where I said, I don't want to sell. I don't want to be a salesman. I don't want to ride the ups and downs of the industry anymore. I want to start my own company. And I said to myself, I'm going to allow the universe to bring me whatever it sees as the proper thing for me to pay attention to. And within a month, I had 5 opportunities to start my own company. And some of them are very funny. I don't know if we have time, but in particular, the one that was the most interesting was the one where a neighbor moved in next door to me. There were only 4 homes on this whole street, and 2 of them were empty. I bought one, and my new neighbor came along, and I went over to say hi and brought him a coffee cake, and we ended up becoming friends, going to breakfast together, going to lunch together. And in talking one day, I shared with him this idea I had for time tracking. Now, I had this idea because I found out from my accountant that I had to keep track of the time I spent on my computer if I wanted to deduct it as a business expense. Imagine that. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the IRS thought computers were toys. So if you were using them for business, you had to prove it, and you needed a log. And I thought to myself, well, there's got to be software out there that does this. So I looked and there wasn't. So I said to Neil, my partner, I said, hey, I'd like to come up with something that does this. Maybe I could build this with a database program like DBase 2 or something like that. And he shook his head and we drew out a few sketches. 6 weeks later, he says, Mitch, come on over. I want to show you something. So I take the long trip down my driveway, up to his little office, and he opens up his Apple II, and shows me on screen exactly what he had drawn on the napkin and what was a prototype of the time slip software that we would soon build a company around. There was only one wrinkle. He had done it on an Apple II. We needed it on a PC because the world was embracing PCs. That was the era where PCs were just coming into their own. And I said to him, well, I know you could program on an Apple II, but what are you going to do about a PC? He goes, it's just code. I'm sure I could do it. So we both put $5,000 each into a bank account. And from there, we bought him a new IBM PC with a huge 10 megabyte drive.
Ooh.
And I waited, like a sweating for like weeks for him to figure it out. And he finally calls me up. He goes, come on over. I want to show you something. So I go over again, and there he is in front of the PC. And he says, watch this. And he takes his finger and he presses a key on the keyboard, and the letter shows up on the screen. And I said to him, yeah. He goes, I programmed that. And I had this thought, oh my God, this is going to be a long road. but I also knew he was brilliant. And within a matter of months, we had a working prototype of a version 0.1. And that was the beginning of TaxKick, which was going to be the software that kept track of time for taxes. Well, we got to the point 6 months later, we finished TaxKick. It was running. We had the documentation. So I said, Neil, I think we need to quit our jobs and do this. He goes, I'm game. So we quit our jobs on Friday. Monday, I get a phone call from my accountant who says, Mitch, I got bad news for you. I said, what's the bad news? He goes, the IRS has relaxed their ruling on contemporaneous record keeping. So I'm sorry about that software you wrote. It's pretty much useless at this point. So what is a person who just spent the last 6 months of their life pouring their life into something like this do? The answer is not give up. The answer is scream, holler, yell, complain, bitch, cry, throw things around the room, and then pivot. And that's what we did. We brainstormed and figured out who else would need active time tracking. And the idea came to us, hey, lawyers need active time tracking. Why don't we build a legal time billing tracking system? So I said to Neil, Neil, have you ever built the billing system before? And he goes, oh yeah, piece of cake. I said, really? He goes, yeah, I built one for hairdressers some time ago. I said, oh God, hairdressers, not quite lawyers, but let's go with that. And then I went to the library at Boston University. I started taking out the user manuals on all these very heavy duty time and billing systems for lawyers that were written in COBOL and Fortran. And we took the manuals and we copied the billing formats and realized what features we needed by reading those manuals. And we built them into this new modern pop-up DOS-based platform. And 3 months later, we released Timeslips version 1.0.
That's awesome. Right. So again, pay attention, courage and grit, because it's like you got hit with something hard and all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I'll show you, world, the same words used before. And again, for those of you who are quite young, listening to this, 10 megabytes was a huge deal back then. I mean,
oh my God.
Right. I mean, today it's like, really, but remember there was the moonshot that it was only on 2 megabytes. So 10 megabytes was huge.
Yep.
And it's placed. So let's talk about time slip, because that's so many people give up, as we know. So part of selling and getting very successful in growing a company is you've got to get that courage and grit into the sales process. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, do you remember the first time you got to your first $1 million in sales?
I do. I absolutely do.
How excited? How'd you feel? Can you share anything like back from the memories?
Sure. So we started the company. We went 90 days without pay while we were building this new version. We finally released it. And when we released it, we had a total of $10,000 in marketing budget. We had been visited by the PC Magazine rep who convinced me to spend 6 of that $10,000 on 2 ads in PC Magazine. And he said, "Oh, you'll make double or triple your money back on those ads." I said, "Oh, okay, good. Well, let's go for it." And we did. And we made 6 sales for $99 each after both ads ran. And I was devastated. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, there's my first act as CEO. I made a big blunder. But then about 3 weeks later, he visited my house and handed me this fat envelope filled with something called bingo leads. Now, Doug, you may know what this is, maybe not. But a bingo lead is, remember the tear out cards inside of magazines?
Yes.
Where there's a bunch of numbers. And what you do is you go through the magazine and you circle the numbers of all the products you like. And then you send in this one card through the mail. And then all of a sudden those vendors would send you their promotional materials. Well, he hands me this envelope. There's 500 bingo leads in this envelope. And I thought to myself, well, look, I got to tell you, I have no other resources. I just sat down and started calling every one of them. And here was what happened. That became the most valuable thing that could have happened. So in retrospect, I am a believer that everything always happens exactly for the right reason and sometimes exactly at the right time. Well, in this case, it was for both, because I sat down and I called every one of those leads. And 2 things happened. I sold another 30 copies, which is not a lot of money, made half of our advertising revenue back. But more importantly, I got market research on exactly who is interested in looking and needs our product. And from that exercise, we switched all of our efforts into marketing to lawyers. So initially, PC Magazine marketed to everybody. But then when we started marketing to lawyers, we didn't have any money left. So we were running $30 classified ads, $50 classified ads, and every single ad had an extension code. So we were able to tally up on paper, on a paper pad, every order that came in and where it came from. So we were able to then reinvest in those listings that made us money. So we got to the point where we were now making 7, 10, sometimes 11 sales a week. And just me and my partner operating out of my garage, it was enough to keep the company going as we continued our work. Well, I had gone to Comdex. The first Comdex show was a big expense. It was $2,000. And I wandered the Comdex halls, 2 million square feet, over the course of 2 weeks. I wore out my shoes. I almost crippled myself. I was so tired. But here's what ended up happening. I gave away 100 copies of the software to people that I thought I could create joint ventures with. But I also dropped a copy of the software off at the InfoWorld desk. And I asked if there was someone, a writer at the InfoWorld desk I could speak with. And he goes, "No, but if you give us your software, we'll hand it to one of the writers." I did. I forgot about that. 6 months later, we get a phone call, said, "Hi, this is a fact checker from InfoWorld." I said, "A what?" He goes, "Yes, your software is going to be reviewed in InfoWorld, and we're calling to do some fact checking. We want to make sure we have the phone number right. We want to make sure we have the address right. We want to make sure we have the price of the product right." I said, "Sure." And then at that point, I told Neil, I said, "Neil, we're getting reviewed in InfoWorld." And he goes, "Oh my God." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "InfoWorld is the toughest reviewer of all. Even if they give you a decent review, it will crash the company." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "InfoWorld never gives anybody a good review." I said, "Oh, now I'm depressed." And then we waited and we waited and we waited. Nothing happened. Then finally, it's 5:45 in the morning. I'm sleeping in my bedroom and the garage is downstairs, and I hear not one, but all 6 of our phones ringing at the same time. I go downstairs. I'm like literally in my underwear, and "Hello, Timeslips Corporation, can I help you?" And "Yes, I'd like to place an order for Timeslips, please. Here's my credit card." And I sat there for 3 hours writing order after order after order until finally I asked somebody, "How did you find out about us?" They said, "Well, what do you mean? Didn't you see the review in InfoWorld?" I said, "No, we haven't gotten the magazine yet." They said, "Oh, yeah, you did pretty well." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You got a 9.3. I said, "Really?" He goes, "Well, 9.3 is the highest they've ever awarded any software. Only WordPerfect got a 9.3 besides you. So now it started to happen is all my calls to all the distributors and the chain stores, which never got answered. All of a sudden now I'm getting calls from Egghead Discount Software. They wanted 700 copies. I got another order from Ingram Micro. They wanted 500 copies. I got another order from Kenful. They wanted 1,000 copies of the software. And Doug, we went from 11 sales a week to now 600 a week overnight.
It's pretty good growth. Pretty good growth. So, and look, some people listening to this might say, well, you kind of got lucky, right? You got into this and it sort of fell in. It seems like, a nice rags to riches story. But what I caught out of this is three things that you did strategically, whether you knew it or not at the time. I know you know it now, but you got very clear on the target. And, too many companies are out there and they're just spread out all over the place and they're not really sure what the target should be. The second thing I got was you started creating relationships in the form of joint ventures. And the third thing was you got free publicity, if you will, but you got third-party endorsement from an incredibly credible entity. And those three things started coming together because you had that courage and grit, if you will, to see it through. I'll show you what, when we were working with Chet Holmes, what he would call pig-headed discipline and determination. You just keep going, and you'll find the way.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, that's just the beginning of the story. It turns out that once we got into distribution, we need bigger space. So we moved from my garage to a little 1,800 square foot facility. We hired some people. We outgrew that in 18 months, moved to a 18,000 square foot facility, hired a bunch more people. And then once again, we had to move a third time to a 24,000 multi-floor facility where we were able to house our tech support and a separate place in the same building for our manufacturing. Back then we manufactured software. Today, all that's done on a server. But back then we literally had to burn disks and shrink wrap them into manuals and then create a shipping operation to do all this. So I got an education in every aspect of buying and manufacturing and shipping and pricing and negotiation and all these things. But the best part is that our initial success proved to other partners that we had value. I capitalized that by going to other software companies and say, hey, can we work out a bundle deal where you take our software and you put a flyer in the box of your software and I'll do the same? So in other words, we went to all the accounting software companies and say, hey, this is not competitive. We do time and billing. You do general ledger, PL and all that. Let's put a flyer in your box. Well, this is free, right? We put a flyer in their box. We give them a small percentage of every sale we get from that flyer. Next thing we know, we have a new sales channel. So now I just kept doing that and doing that and doing it until eventually we must have had 40 people promoting our software. And that, again, was just the beginning. So all of these things, what success leads to is more success if you say, okay, what did I do right? How do I capitalize on that? What, having had this initial success, does it mean to other potential partners? How do I leverage this into that? And that's really what happened for the years until we just kept growing and growing. And then we hit points where we had tough times. We had, basically what we ended up doing is we plateaued. And being plateaued is scary when you have a growing company and growing expenses. But I ended up discovering something completely unorthodox, and I decided to pursue it. And here's what it was. I ended up asking one of my existing clients to help another client with our software because she was having problems in her office in Los Angeles. I was in Massachusetts, and I asked her if she could go over and help this other client. It was an important client. She turned out to be the technology chair of the Los Angeles Bar Association. And if she didn't like our product, she could make waves for us in a bad way. But if she did like our product, she could make very good waves for us too. So I asked this customer who I didn't know very well. She knew me because we were really good at communicating, by the way. We sent out emails and newsletters and magazines every week to our customers, keeping them informed as to what's going on with the company, what's going on with the software, tips and tricks to use the advanced features. And remember, this is all before the internet. So what ended up happening, I called this woman. I said, Ann, I need your help. I apologize to impose on you. I'm happy to pay you. Can you go over and help this woman? She goes, Mitch, for you? Sure, I'd love to. Thank you so much for even thinking of me. Well, I wait on pins and needles now while she goes over there. I'm waiting to see what happens. Finally, the phone rings at 9:00 at night. And she says, oh, Mitch, it's all taken care of. I said, oh, thank you so much, Ann. I am so happy. I appreciate it so much. She goes, well, I didn't tell you the best part. I said, what's the best part? She goes, she gave me $100 bill. I said, really? She goes, yes. Now here's the next few words changed my life. Doug, she said to me, and if you need anybody else who could use my help, let me know. And that's when this blinding light exploded in my brain and said, what would happen if I had 10 Anns, 100 Anns, 200, 300 Anns all over the country supporting and selling my software? So I decided at that point to create a test. And I built a test and I sold the test for $500. Well, before I knew it, I was generating $20,000, $30,000 a month in tests. But once they passed the tests, I certified them. And that was my mistake, because about 90 days later, I started to get complaints and threats of lawsuits because these people might have passed a test, but they were far from acting like a professional coach or consultant. So after dodging several lawsuits and calling 60 people to interview them personally as to what went wrong, I shut down the program, but I knew it was a great idea. So I did the research and I created a plan to rebuild the program, but fixing all the mistakes that we had made. And we did that. And we relaunched the program, and very quickly, we ramped up to 350 certified consultants, all paying us $5,000 a year to be certified and selling our software. We gave them a small discount. They were selling our software. So we ended up doing 3 important things overnight, actually 4. The first is generating $1 million in profits per year just from certification fees. The second is creating our 3rd largest sales channel by enabling certified consultants to resell all of our products, including upgrading our existing customers. Third, we dropped our tech support costs by 20% because of all these great certified consultants. And then finally, what we ended up doing, we shut down competition. Why? Because no other time and billing software vendor had offices in every major city in the country.
That makes a ton of sense. So could we encompass this and say probably your main strategy for growth? Because 350 people at 15,000 is like $1.75 million a year in recurring revenue right then and there, which is pretty much all profit.
All profit. Yep.
Right. So that, even a company doing, 20 million would love an extra couple $1 million in profit just coming off the game, or even a company doing 200 million
Sure.
to get an extra one. So, but what I'm getting out of this, Mitch, is, and this is uncanny because I've seen you roll this out in Business Breakthroughs International and other things that you've done, is you're using the power of promoting your own horn through other third-party endorsed people, and you're building a tribe of people who are your, let's just call them, they're your advocates, and they're just going to go to the streets for you. And so you essentially built a large sales team on full commission.
Yes.
But you built it as a tribe, right?
Exactly.
So we could spend 2 hours talking about this, but just in the essence of time, it's like, okay, so here's the deal. You sold that company, you became independently wealthy at the age of 42, and then you moved on and we built Business Breakthroughs International, you, Tony Robbins, and Chet Holmes. I want to fast forward today because, the main strategy that you used is what I know you used also at Chet Holmes and you're using now in your life, which is building out tribes. And you wrote this
Exactly.
book called Power Tribes. And for those of you who don't have it, it's, Mitch Russo, Power Tribes. And you can get it on Amazon, or Mitch, is there another place they can get it?
Well, if they go to powertribesbook.com, they could still buy it on Amazon, but they get a $500 course free along with the book purchase.
So I would go to the free $500 bonus gift there, guys, and go to the website. So Mitch, let's talk about, any company can use this concept.
Yes.
If they know how to, and you're an expert in this field, and I know this. This is how we did this. I mean, we built over a $25 million company just building out tribes in some capacity at with Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins.
Exactly.
But now you're doing this as a living because you're an independently wealthy guy, and you want to have a business where you don't have 300 or 400 employees anymore. So what? Could you tell our audience, what is the number one reason that anyone, including them listening, should be building a tribe?
Well, let's create a distinction first. There's what most people think of as a sales force. And of course, I think most companies either should or do already have a sales force of one sort or another. But a tribe is a different animal. A tribe is a culture-based community. So let's go into this for just a minute because it's important. A culture-based community. So what is the purpose of a culture? When you have a culture at a company, it is really how people feel about working at that company. But more important, the culture dictates behavior. And so what would happen if you deliberately created a culture even before you created the team? And that's what I do with Power Tribes. What I do is I basically create what I call a culture Parthenon. I borrowed that from Jay Abraham, the word Parthenon. But what I mean is that the roof of the Parthenon are the core values of the CEO and the company. So if you can visualize this, here's the values sitting up above the tribe, and the columns of the Parthenon are the codes of ethics that we create with our clients. So what is a code of ethics? The code of ethics are really individual codes that dictate behavior. So what might be an example of that? Like anything on our website is the property of our company. You cannot take that and repurpose it on your own. And you certainly can't do it without our permission or without attribution. That happens to be a code in the code of ethics. Another code of ethics might say something like, you can never treat another person in a way that you wouldn't like to be treated. Another thing is that we never support competition. We support co-opetition. And if you ever find yourself in a position of being competitive with somebody on your own team, please ask for help because we could show you how not to need to be competitive and still make more money either way. And there's 38 of these codes that I provide for my clients. But once you build this and then you start enrolling people, something magical happens. The tribe becomes self-fulfilling, self-policing. So now instead of dealing with what I would call, colorful characters who might be negative or try to take people down, instead of, all of that coming back up to the CEO who might have to deal with it, now the tribe does it by themselves. What I mean is it's self-regulating. I've had situations in my own tribes that I've built where people have gotten negative inside the community and others have said to them, well, look, that's not how we are here. You see the code of ethics, it says right there, this is not what you're supposed to do. And maybe you should quit. Maybe this place isn't right for you if you're going to feel this way. And most of the time people get right back in line. It's like, because it's the culture that dictates behavior. And if you take the time and build it first, it pays huge, huge dividends later.
That is a I'll call it an insightful insight. It's so right. It's so valuable because what most people think is, oh, I just go out and I build a team of whatever, or I'll build a community of whatever, but they never think about what the community is supposed to be doing to get the outcome that you as the business owner actually would like to have, as well as what and the people who are joining, also want that same type of outcome, right? So
correct.
And when you build loyalty, when you build something like that, it creates massive loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about even Apple, when they were first getting along, right? People at Apple, man, they were vehemently defending Apple's brand. If you were a PC guy, you were on the low totem pole, if you will, at that point. You were down there, and I literally would witness verbal arguments over Apple products with people promoting them. So you build this out, you get this community going, and then you can monetize that community, or the community monetizes itself for you.
See, as long as you are upfront with people, look, what I mean by upfront is, hey, it's going to cost you $5,000 to join on a yearly basis, and this is what you get for your $5,000. And if you're upfront with people and you tell them in advance what things are going to cost and what opportunities exist, then by the end of that year or sooner, they'll know very quickly, actually, whether or not you could be trusted, whether you are being upfront and doing what you said you'll do. So my belief is that you don't do what you said you were going to do. You don't. You overdo. You over-deliver. And by the time the following year comes around, we then use a simple mathematical formula to figure out how much we could charge for certification. And one of the ways we do that is very simple. We simply say, how much could somebody make using certification as a certified partner? Now, if we do the math, back of the envelope math in 5 minutes, and say, well, this guy could probably make six figures. Then if we charge $10,000 or even $20,000 for certification, then we know next year if he made $100K plus, he'll pay another $20K to stay certified. But if he can only make $40K, then we can't charge $20 for certification. So in a very simplistic way, there's more factors, but this is one of them. We project what the average certified partner can make, and that's how we figure out how to price certification. And then we lower the price for the pilot program, so we can get a bunch of people in early, we can get a bunch of people through, a bunch of people successful very quickly, and then we harvest those testimonials and we use that to sell the next class of certification.
So you actually self-fund this.
Of course.
Right from the beginning. Well, a lot of people listening to this, no matter what size company they own, if they own $100 million company, they want to create a certification or some type of thing. They're thinking they got to put a ton of money into this thing right up front to make it work. Is that?
Well, you do got to pay me to consult with you and make sure your program is a success. But other than that, the only real money you're investing is in resources, meaning you need to have an incredible training program, and I guide my clients through how to build that. You need to make sure that you have all the mechanisms in place to support your certified partners, no matter what they are, whether it's CRM, whether it's automated systems, whether it's sales systems. But now here again is a big difference between what I do and what other people who do certification do. When I build a certification program, I go with the idea that, and I think, Doug, you can easily understand what I'm about to tell you because you lived it with me at Business Breakthroughs. What do we know about coaches when it comes to sales? They're great at coaching.
Right. But they're not great at sales, most of them.
Exactly. So if you sold a coach a certified coach program and they spent their money to buy it, and then that certificate hang behind their desk and they never made a nickel, are they going to ever pay you another penny again?
Not likely.
Not likely. However, what would happen if you decided to take care of that person and support them? What would happen if you literally created lead flow just for them? What would happen if you hired a PR person internally inside your own company for the sole purpose of setting up presentations for all your certified partners locally so that they get a phone call out of the blue? Say, hey, Bob, you available on Thursday night at 10 o'clock to speak to the Marlboro Bar Association? They'd love to have you and have you talk about the services and the business you're doing. This guy's going to go, what? Really? Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Well, this is what we do. And that's just the beginning. I mean, we do all kinds of programs for our certification team. And you remember what we did at Business Breakthroughs with spiffs and promotions. And we do all the same thing with our certified partners, because the bottom line is we want them to be successful.
And let me take a wild guess here, Mitch, and say when they're successful, they're going to go out and tell other people how successful they are. Others are going to notice firstly, then they're going to say, what are you doing?
Yep.
Right. And then maybe that leads back to the additional free referrals coming in, or you spiff the referrals coming in, or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
But you're growing the tribe and continuously growing it through an organic method. So, all right. So I get it. There's an upfront, you got to get it in there. And I mean, I don't know, an average return on an investment. I mean, is it, hey, I put a whatever it might be, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it might be into this program. And I could expect to, get back 2 to 1, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, 20 to 1. Or is it, dot.
Well, here's what we do. When we begin the process of screening a potential client to work with us, the first thing we do is we run a P&L. And what I mean by that is I've built a custom P&L just for certification. And we start with a group of base assumptions. And with those assumptions, we're able to determine relatively quickly whether or not it's a fit for them. And some of those assumptions are, how many customers do you have? And if you have less than 500 customers, it's going to be hard to sell certification. Doesn't mean you can't, it's just harder. If you have over 1,000 customers, it's a slam dunk, because we know, again, if we go back to Chet Holmes' beautiful stadium pitch idea, it said, if you used to use the triangle as an illustration, where inside the stadium, the top 2 or 3% are the early adopters. They're ready to buy as soon as they sit down. Then you go below one level. Those are the ones who want to wait and see how the early adopters did before they buy. Well, it's the same thing. In any client base, there are early adopters. So if you have 1,000 people in your client base and you offer them certification and it costs $20,000 and you could justify it and show them how they're going to make money, and they buy it and they're successful, then that means you're going to get probably 20 people, maybe 30 people who say yes. So you'll make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on your pilot class. And then once they're successful, you take those testimonials and now you move down the pyramid one notch and you promote it to the less than early adopters, the ones who wait to see how many arrows the early adopters got in their back before they buy. But once they see that the early adopters were successful, then they step up and buy. Now they'll pay a little more, and they know that. They're okay with that because they value security more than a lower price. But at that stage now, when we run the P&L, we're generating between 65 and 75% profit margins. So whatever it is that we charge, whatever it is that we need, the big upfront expense besides my fees are infrastructure. And what I mean by infrastructure is you got to have a courseware. You got to be able to work with me to create the type of training program that will guarantee 100% competency. Now, Doug, I think you know that I worked with Tony to help build his learning management system back in those days. And Tony taught me a lot about how people learn. And I now take a lot of what I learned from Tony, and I build it into all of these programs with my clients. So we are literally taking people and almost guaranteeing 100% comprehension when they graduate through these programs.
That's awesome. And by the way, for those of you who don't know who Tony is, that's Mr. Tony Robbins, a large man in stature as well as in finance and bank accounts
and heart.
And heart. Yeah, that's very, very true. And heart. So Mitch, I heard 65 to 75% profit margins. Now, me being the guy I am with the numbers, I might have heard something incorrect. Is it like 65 to 75% profit margins?
Yeah. And while we're talking, if you like, I could pull up a spreadsheet and show you on screen, but that's how real that is.
I trust you. I mean, I've known you forever. So it's certainly, and I remember, you and I working on profit margins back in the day. So I definitely believe you've got them all worked out because I know what your spreadsheets look like. So
yep, you got it.
So Mitch, if anybody wants to get a hold of you Like they go, man, I want to build a tribe. And why shouldn't they, unless they have less than 500 customers right now? How do they get a hold of you?
Well, of course, MitchRusso.com is my main site, but for the Power Tribes opportunity, the easiest thing to do would be to go to mypowertribe.com, singular, mypowertribe.com. And what you'll do there is you'll be able to watch a short cartoon video of the process and then watch a testimonial video. I should have more than one up there, but I don't. And of course, you'll be able to fill out a form and apply to have a conversation with me about it. And in that conversation, which is really comprehensive, that's a learning experience, I think, for most people who take me up on this offer. They're going to learn a lot about their company and about certification, about profitability, et cetera.
I guarantee it's worth your time. I mean, Mitch and I have spent years and years and years working together. I know what kind of quality he brings. So that was www.mypowertribe.com. Correct. Well, go there now. If you're thinking about it, don't wait, because, the law of decay will kick in. Mm-hmm. So, Mitch, anything, I have one other question for you, but I mean, anything you want to give away or potentially to the audience?
I do. I have something this is a sort of, I told you before, it's my pandemic project. I was bored, so I decided to create a guide for all of the marketing techniques that I know of. And there are 28. And that book is a little book called Profit Stacking Secrets. And in it, you get every one of my strategies. And on top of that, when you buy the book, I actually include a 60-day email education program as well. So I know, Doug, you already bought the book and you're just now starting to get the emails. The emails are more in-depth than the book, actually. But what you're going to get is in-depth overview of 28 different marketing strategies, and more to come, by the way. So, and that's basically the first 3 are free. And you go to profitstackingsecrets.com, download the free report that will give you 3 free publicity strategies or low-cost publicity strategies right away.
And all 3 of them are really great. And I can tell you, because I've gone through the program now, I looked through that, and Mitch is right. I actually invested in it. He didn't give it to me for free, and I wouldn't have expected that, right? So the fact that I invested in it, I went through this, and I can tell you firsthand that these are detailed. It's not just a line list of stuff to do. This actually breaks it down, and you can even get a calculator and a financial spreadsheet on this whole process, which I did too. And that's very comprehensive. So, go to profitstackingsecrets.com or go to mypowertribe.com if you want to talk about the tribes. And Mitch, I have one question that, quite frankly, I borrowed from you. So I'd like to ask you this question.
Okay.
If you could spend one day as a superhero, mm-hmm. who would you be? And what would you do to make the world a better place?
Okay, so I'm going to answer you because I didn't know you were going to ask this question. I'm going to tell you just what came to mind. And this person is a superhero, but not what a conventional superhero would be. My answer is Buddha.
Interesting.
If I could be Buddha for one day, what I would do is I would use modern technology to share that message with the world. The one thing I love about Buddha is that he said nothing that offends anybody. There is nothing that Buddha teaches that conflicts with any religion, any belief system, except maybe communism in China. I don't think they like Buddhism there. But the bottom line is that if I had the ability to reach thousands, if not millions, maybe billions of people with the message of Buddhism, to me, it would be an incredible gift, not just to me, it would be to me, of course, but I think to many. And that's why I'm answering the question the way you asked it.
It's a wonderful answer. I really appreciate that. And knowing you, I can understand, Buddha, I mean, a guy who studied Buddhism myself, I really can relate to that. And I bet a lot of the listeners can do the same. So, Mitch, I want to thank you so much for being on this. And I want to put your URLs out there again. If you want to talk to Mitch about tribes, go to www.mypowertribe.com. And at the very least, go to profitstackingsecrets.com. I personally have invested in this, and I can tell you it's definitely worth far more than Mitch is asking for the book. And we'll go from there. So Mitch, again, thank you for coming on to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. It's been a blessing, and I'm very, very grateful.
My pleasure, Doug. Thank you.
You are welcome, sir. Wow, what a lot of great information on this particular episode here. One of the biggest things that people, they kind of forget about is in building business, not everything is going to go straight up, right? We always have our times. And Mitch was very candid about that he has had his times where, things went up, they plateaued, they had to figure it out again, or things went up, they went right back down, and then they had to figure it out again. But his attitude on around, I'll show you, that courage and that grit, that no matter what Chet Holmes called pig-headed discipline and determination, that is one thing that can take your company and move it all the way. Because you will have hard times, and you will have times where it's just like, man, can I get to this next level? If you have the right strategy in place, you have the right mentors in place, and you have the right courage and grit in place, you can pretty much make it through anything and excel. So I really appreciate Mitch's point of view. And for those of you who have not built a community or built a tribe, who want to build a tribe, I highly recommend Mitch. Again, I worked with the man for multiples of years, and I was part of helping build that $25 million company with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. And I can tell you, Mitch displayed everything he talked about on this particular episode, this podcast, that he displayed while I was working for him. And, I learned a lot from the man, and I'm very grateful that he was on. So if you like this podcast, please share it with someone else that maybe it could help them move to the next level. So if you can help them move to the next level, please share it. If you like this podcast, please go up and give me a review. 5-star would be perfect. Thank you. And this is Doug Brown, Doug at businesssuccessfactors.com. I'll look forward to another episode being together.